really interesting up here. There's a group of hackers who have started implanting ARFIDs. These are the same thing that people put in their pets to, they can kind of scan them with the pound and return them to you. But what they're doing is they're then modifying their computers and their doors and so on and so forth, so they can log into their computers with a wave of the hand. They can start their cars with a wave of the hand, and they can just go into their house kind of Star Trek style. There's really great stuff going on in the brain space too. Up here, the Emotive is a game controller that's about to come on the market. It reads your emotions, your facial expression, and your kind of perceptual physical motion. So if you kind of imagine pushing something, something will be pushed in the game. It consists of 17 EEG sensors and some digital signal processors. It's essentially the same technology that was developed for reading brainwaves for diagnostic purposes in the medical field. Down here, there's a technology called transcranial magnetic stimulation, also used in research and clinical applications in various countries, that just sends pulses of magnetism through various parts of people's brains that activate those areas. And it's a tremendously powerful technology. These guys are designing one you can build in your garage so that you can walk out and mess with your brain. This last one is another sensory extension. The field space is designed by a group of researchers in European university. And what they did is they took an electronic compass and a series of buzzers. And when you wear this circle of buzzers, people quickly forget they're there, but it always just buzzes north. And so you have an intuitive awareness of where north is. And for no reason that I can completely explain, people just never get lost again. Now, this is a university, I want it. This is a university research project, not exactly coming on the market anytime soon. But in the spirit of this hackery, a group of hackers I know, actually related to the magnet, took a series of cell phone buzzers and an electronic compass and stuck them in a hat so they could do it themselves. Works. Now, of course, thus far, I am leaving out a huge area, probably the biggest area where we commonly engage in body modification and the making of the self, and that's pharmaceuticals. And pharmaceuticals have come a long way from what they were 20, 30 years ago. They're incredibly precise by comparison. They're also bringing up a lot of fascinating issues in this space, probably faster than anything else is. Take this one, Adderall. It's getting, it's widely prescribed for ADD and ADHD, especially among children, but it's getting a lot of secondary use in the schools as an aid for taking tests because it's a cognitive enhancer. It allows you to sleep less, and it makes you just a little bit smarter. So, of course, the question comes up, are you cheating if you take a test on Adderall? I don't know. In the course of interviewing people on their relationship with drugs, I discovered something interesting about this kind of level of modification, of making the self, which is that there's a whole relationship people have with their drugs, and it's not addiction. They like who they are with the drug. That's the person they want to be. The person they are without it is to them inferior. And this is the person who they define themselves as. Getting between this person and their Adderall would probably be unsafe. And there's a lot of people. Now, it's not, I should say, it's not just psychoactive drugs. This is beta blockers, originally a heart medication. They're lowering blood pressure, but they also kind of help you resist the fight or flight impulse. Being used a great deal by musicians and other performers to keep them calm, to allow them to perform better. Now again, an ethical question comes up here. The majority of the musicians who use beta blockers say they use them for auditions. Is that fair? If you use them for auditions and not for performances, are you doing a kind of bait and switch? Now, it's been easy to some degree to come to a decision on a lot of drugs because there's this Faustian bargain. You get benefits, but you pay later. And this is kind of the perception that we have with a lot of enhancements as well as drugs. There's a trade-off, right? Well, maybe not. This is a really interesting drug. that's bringing up a lot of issues right now. It's called Provigil, and it was originally developed for narcolepsy. And just in case, just to check, how many of you have heard of Provigil? Yeah, a couple, not many. I've been in front of other audiences, and I've asked that, and quite a few people have confirmed that they raised Provigil, but never once has anyone said they were narcoleptic. And Provigil allows you to not sleep. Makes you a little bit smarter, makes it easier to focus, but mostly it allows you to not sleep, and you don't pay later. So you stay awake on Provigil, and then you go to sleep eventually as normal. You return to your normal schedule. No catch-up. It doesn't have any abuse potential, which means it's not addictive. It doesn't have very much in the way of side effects. It just lets you do more. In fact, there was a soldier study at one point. As you can imagine, the military loves this. There's a soldier study which soldiers had 72 hours being awake, 100 milligrams of Provigil every 8 hours, with 2 hours of sleep a night. At the end, they were doing better on reaction and cognitive tests than they were at the beginning. So why aren't we all on this drug? It costs $10 a pill. So this like lends itself to, this brings up another question. There's a kind of new classism that emerges with this whole idea of enhancement. Because, and I think it's a really, really insidious form. Because if you have, say, a stereotype that rich people are smart and poor people are dumb, what happens when you have, say, a pill that makes that kind of true? But like I said, we are the sum, our bodies are the sum of society. So the question came up, what happens if, say, the next 2 generations down the line, Provigil really makes you smarter, you don't have to sleep, you can do anything you want, comes down the line, and what happens when that just becomes widespread and it becomes cheap, because all the medications do eventually become cheap? Well, that seems like it would be an unpredictable situation, but I'm a bit of a amateur historian, so when I come up against these questions, I like to sift through history and look for something, and I found an example where we have already done this, and you may have already guessed what I mean, and that's coffee. The introduction, I'm going to talk about the introduction of coffee into Europe. It's a particularly well-documented example. Coffee was introduced into Europe via a coffee house across the street from Oxford in the 17th century. Draw your own conclusions. And it's always been a really political drink. Almost immediately there was a proclamation from Charles II trying to ban coffee. And I really love it. It's long, but I'm just going to say, scandalous reports devised to the defamation of His Majesty's government. Stop talking shit about the government when you're drinking coffee. It's always been a seditious drink. Jonathan Swift said, coffee makes us severe, grave, and philosophical. Contrast that with alcohol, contrast that with the pubs. So all over Europe, coffee spread like wildfire, and a great conversation took place over coffee. And I love this image of the coffee house. You can see this guy holding forth and exhorting, and just this amazingly vibrant place. So many people are thinking and acting and so on and so forth. So what happens next in Europe? What's the next thing that happens in history? The Enlightenment. Now, the role of coffee in the Enlightenment is actually pretty easy to trace because the major figures of the Enlightenment recorded it. They attributed many things to coffee. Bach wrote the Coffee Cantina in his off hours. Voltaire claimed to drink 72 cups a day, which either he was lying or that was some weak coffee. So you know, it definitely had its good bits, the Enlightenment, and its not so good bits. But the major thing is that it was big. And its nature was shaped by this stimulant that was running around society. And every issue that we're facing now, they confronted. Class issues, soldier enhancement. This is actually a little later on. This is from the Civil War. During the Civil War, the U.S. North, the North, blockaded the South from getting shipments of coffee, and then took what they got from Brazil and distributed it amongst the soldiers. Didn't actually give any to the civilian population. So they could march further and shoot straighter. And very, very keenly, when the South would raid northern camps, one of the main things they would steal is coffee.